Here we have a Microsoft Surface Book from 2020 with a GPU that only set me back £300, and back when it was brand new it cost almost £3,000. So 5 years later, let's take a look and see how well it holds up. The prospect of a 2-in-1 has always piqued my interest, and today here we have possibly the best 2-in-1 laptop from when the world simulated Plague.Inc. Here we have a Microsoft Surface Book 3 from 2020 with a price tag of nearly £3,000 brand new. How did I acquire such a deal? I don't know, maybe camping on eBay. The seller described it as very good refurbished, and as these models sell for nearly double, it was a no-brainer. With an i7 10th gen, 32GB of RAM, GTX 1660 Ti graphics, and best of all, a 4K screen, there's some serious value packed in this machine. Well, upon first glance, it wasn't all that seemed to be. Very good refurbished, yet it looked bruised and abused. Dents and scratches galore. Man, why did they have to take the feet? Okay, perhaps the seller was lying. Makes sense why there were no actual pictures. Oh well, I'm still confident this will eradicate any buyer's remorse once I switch it on, so let's go ahead and do just that. Here we have the rather inconspicuous Surface Book 3, which is actually my first Surface laptop, so this will be quite interesting to take a look at. I mean, can you actually believe that there's a GPU in this, in such a thin chassis? We have to take a look at that. So, with all of that said, let's take a look and see how this near £3,000 laptop from 2020 holds up 5 years later in gaming, some benchmarks, and of course the functionality that you do get in a Surface Book. Fun fact, this is actually the final Surface Book they released, so this will be quite interesting to take a look at. So, let's take a look. One reason why I was so intrigued with this laptop upon buying was because around 5 years ago, Linus made a video on this specific laptop and I was like, yeah, I can never afford this. Well, 5 years later, here we are. I guess it's always cool to buy tech that, you know, a few years ago you couldn't afford. So here we have it. It's just a shame that it's not in the best condition. It could have been a lot better considering that it was labeled as very good refurbished, which is kind of annoying. I will try and get in correspondence with the seller and see what they have to say about that. Anyways, enough of the rambling. Let's turn it on and see what the Surface Book is like. Okay. Straight away, okay, there you go. There you have the Windows logo, which is kind of cool. And by the looks of it, we're on Windows 10, which is kind of strange considering that Windows 11 has been out for quite a few years now. And Windows 10 is losing its support in like a week, I think. So kind of a strange decision, but I guess we can take a look at Windows 10 one final time. So let's try and go into it. Okay, looks like there's a password. Oh no, what the hell could it be? 1111? No, okay. 1122. Hey, there you are, second try. It always works. But yeah, there you have the Surface Book 3. And one cool thing about this is, of course, you can use it in laptop mode and you can also use it in tablet mode. So we will take a look at that more in depth. But first things first, let's go into Task Manager and see what specs we're working with. There you are. Okay, so the CPU that we're working with is an i7 10th gen, 1065G7 to be exact, at 1.3 GHz. Of course, it has 4 cores and 8 threads. As for the memory, now this is what makes this laptop a really good deal. Another reason why I actually bought it, it comes with 32GB of RAM at 33 MHz, which is actually pretty fast for DDR4. The reason having 32GB in this is so good is because you can't upgrade it. Like, it is soldered onto the motherboard, which is kind of a shame. You can't upgrade it, but hey, at least we have, I think, the highest spec out of all of the models that came out during the time. Of course, the disk, we have a 477GB Toshiba SSD. I'm not sure how fast or how reliable it will be, but we will do the necessary tests. As for the Wi-Fi, we have Wi-Fi 6, which is pretty nice. Wi-Fi 6 back in 2020 was, I think, quite new, and in 2025 it's pretty much everywhere. As for the GPU, we have Iris Plus graphics, but we don't care about that because of course we have NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Ti with a Max-Q design. With this being a Surface Book, you can of course use it in laptop mode and also in tablet mode, which adds more versatility to the machine and probably a reason why loads of people went for it. So let's take a look and see if it works. So all you have to do is just press a little button here and detach. So please close the following apps. Okay, detach anyway, and it should make a little click. Okay, ready to detach. And will it come out? There you are. Take a look at that. Oh, that's crazy, isn't it? So of course you got the tablet, which is really lightweight. I do like that. And let's just leave that aside. And here we have the keyboard / palm rest / GPU. The GPU is built into this thing. That's kind of crazy and kind of offloads the stress that is put into the tablet. So that's quite neat, isn't it? And it also has a battery inbuilt. So this thing has 2 batteries. I'm guessing battery health will be pretty insane. So with all of that said, let's just put that back down and install Windows 11 so we can take a look at this thing more in detail. I mean, thankfully this does have two USB-A ports, which is quite nice. Back in 2020, USB-C wasn't as common, but nowadays every device has USB-C, even your flipping, I don't know, air fryer. So it's quite nice that it has two USB-A so I can actually use my thumb drives and don't have to whip out a flipping dock. Alright, enough said, let's try and go into the BIOS. Okay, I think you have to hold the volume up to actually head into the BIOS. It's a bit different than your standard computer. And of course, there you have it. I don't know if you can see that. So let's just restart it and try and go into the USB. Okay, this time we have to hold down volume down and hopefully that will put us into the boot menu. Now we are working with a 512GB SSD. Okay, where the hell is my mouse? This is why I always carry a wireless mouse just in case. Okay, here's a little dongle. Like I said, having two USB-As, it's always nice. Okay, quite a crap ton of partitions. What the hell is going on? I don't even know why I'm showing you guys this. Let me just skip forward to when this is actually finished so we can actually install Windows 11 and all will be good. The entire time Windows 11 was installing, I didn't have the charger plugged in. I completely forgot about that, but it looks like it's working. The battery surprisingly held up. And I guess that does show that the battery is in good health, but we will take a look at that more in detail. With all of that said, Windows 11 is finally installed, so let's install all of the drivers, all of the applications, so we can actually test this thing out and take a look at it more thoroughly. Since the seller only supplied us with a 65-watt charger and we're working with a 1660 Ti, I had to go ahead and buy a new charger. This one here is 127 watts, which I bought for £12.50 from Sex. So let's plug it up and run the benchmarks. Here we have Cinebench R23. Has the 4-core i7 stood the test of time? Well, let's find out and see what score we get. The score is finally in and we got a score of 3,924, which is slightly better than an i7 4850HQ, which released like in 2014, 2015. So I'll give it that. It is from 2020, which wasn't the best for Intel, but at least it did pretty respectably. Let's test out the GPU and see how well it does in Valley Benchmark. Here we have Valley Benchmark running on the Surface Book 3 at high settings. Since the aspect ratio is 3:2, I've got the resolution set to 1920 by 1280. So with all of that said, let's see how we do in the benchmark. Alright, at the minute we're currently getting around 99 FPS, which isn't terrible. The GPU is at 66 degrees and the CPU is at 69. Not too bad, and I have to say that it's, yeah, look at that, 136 FPS, that's kind of crazy. It's using around 99% of the GPU and the CPU is only using around 24. Makes sense because this is a GPU intensive task, so it will use basically all of the GPU and it's only using around 41 watts of the GPU, which isn't terrible. The CPU is only using around 14 watts. In these more open areas, we're getting around 120 FPS, 96, 97. There's a few fluctuations here and there, but nothing too major. All in all, it looks pretty good, and I have to say that display looks really good. It's essentially a 4K display, but those colors look really crisp. We'll talk about more about the display later on in the video, but yeah, that display is really nice. In these more open areas, we're getting 141 FPS. That's kind of mad, and the average at the minute is 101.4. Like, I have to say, the GPU in this, considering that it's like 6 or 7 years old, isn't terrible. Like, it's a Max-Q GPU, but it's performing to a reasonable standard. Like, if you want to do some video editing tasks, which we will do later on in the video, or if you want to do some photo editing, because our screen is flipping gorgeous, this is the perfect machine. But I have to say, this is pretty impressive. Let me just quit talking and skip forward to when we actually get the result. And there we have it. We got an average FPS of 101. We just about made 100 FPS, which is pretty sick. The score is 4,224 with a minimum FPS of 33.3 and a maximum FPS of 173.3. So there were a few fluctuations here and there, but nothing major. I can honestly allow it given the form factor that we're working with. But all in all, a pretty good result. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Quick update, I actually had to go ahead and reinstall Windows 11 only because Minecraft wouldn't load. For the hell of me, I don't know what the hell happened. It took me like 2 to 3 hours and literally nothing fixed it. I reinstalled the drivers, I used DDU, I updated everything, and still nothing worked. So I went ahead and reinstalled Windows 11. Well, I kind of reset it through Windows settings. Now the issue I was facing was upon going into Minecraft, literally everything would freeze, nothing would work. Hopefully we can get this up and running so we can actually play a bit of Minecraft, because if you can't play Minecraft, that's not a good sign. You know, it's actually the next day that I'm filming this because it took me so long trying to get Minecraft up and running, but here we are, it's finally working. And the reason why Minecraft would just freeze, like, whenever it wanted to was as soon as I changed the resolution, it would die. Like literally, I can't do anything about that. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe you guys do. I did try to use a normal Minecraft launcher and the same thing happened. So guess we have to leave it at that. But anyway, here we have Minecraft Java 1.21.8, and these are the settings that we're working with. 12 chunks all around, full screen is off. The resolution is 3240 by 2160, so essentially 4K. So this will be quite interesting to see how well it can hold up with some shaders. We will test some shaders later on. Quality, fancy, default, the usual stuff. And this is how we're doing in normal Minecraft. So we're currently getting around 107, 110 FPS. Bear with me if you can't actually see the FPS at the top left. So for the GPU, it's currently 73 degrees. The CPU is at 73, so essentially balanced. I mean, it's at 81 right now, so kind of toasty, but nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, you got to think about the package that we're working with. It is pretty thin, and I don't know how it's getting any intake in, but apparently it is. Let's test out some shaders and see how well we do. Let me turn on Astral X, which is a bit more on the intensive side, but it will give us a good idea at how powerful this GPU really is. And yeah, okay. I don't think we can run Astral X on this. I mean, look at that, 8 FPS, 7 FPS. We are on 4K, which makes a bit more sense, but yeah, that is not playable whatsoever. Let's go on to a more sensible shader pack, which is sold as Vibrant Light. And I actually prefer this one to Astral X. I think it looks a bit better. But yeah, we're currently getting around 54, 57, 56 FPS, which is pretty smooth to be fair. The GPU is at 81 degrees and the CPU is at 69. The GPU is using 99% and the CPU is only using 91%. So quite balanced. No CPU or GPU bottlenecks going on. And just flying around 54, 55. We are staying around that 50 FPS mark, which is okay. I would have liked to see above 60, but we are on to 4K. So you got to tempt your expectations. I think we're doing pretty well, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. And let me just show you what actually happens when I change the resolution. So, okay, so the full screen resolution is current, which is 3240 by 2160. If I want to change it to something more sensible, it will just crash. Okay, let me put it onto something like that, which is close enough to 1080p. Yeah, there you are. Minecraft is completely dead. That's great, isn't it? So I guess that's it. I mean, we can't really do much about that, but let's test out another game and see how well we do. And also, I'd like to preface that this is by no means a gaming laptop, but the fact that it does have a GPU means we can game a little bit. And of course, just to test out the GPU, this does have 6GB of VRAM, which is sufficient for most games, I'm guessing. The Surface Book 3 has a lot to it, and for only £300, I do have to say it is a pretty solid machine. Of course, Minecraft didn't work to the standard that I wanted to, but it is what it is. Let's test out Cyberpunk and see how well it does. Right, what I'm going to do here is change the resolution in Cyberpunk and see if that kills the game. Let's take a look. No, it doesn't. Okay, that's great. And if I put on full screen, still works. So clearly it's a Minecraft issue. Like I said, I have no idea what on earth was going on with Minecraft, but if you do know what was causing that issue, then please do let me know down in the comments. So the settings they have pre-selected for us is ray tracing low, which is quite impressive. I mean, I didn't know ray tracing would actually work on this considering it's a GTX card. We'll take a look anyway and see how it does. And of course, everything is on high/ultra settings. So with all of that said, let's take a look and see how it does in the benchmark. Alright, so at the minute we're currently getting 27 FPS and that is with ray tracing low, which is quite impressive. I mean, I didn't know ray tracing would actually work on this, but yeah, 27 FPS, the GPU is 80 degrees, the CPU is 85, so quite on the warm side, but nothing too concerning. We will set the settings a bit lower to see how well it does after, but yeah, 27 FPS, 29, it's just staying around that 30 FPS mark. I don't think we will get an average above 30 FPS, which is kind of disappointing, but it is Cyberpunk and it is on a machine that wasn't intended for gaming even back in 2020, and looks like we got an average FPS of 27.92 with a minimum FPS of 23.05 and maximum FPS of 36.08, and those are the specs that we're working with. So looks like everything is working. It did use a GPU. I was fearing that it was using the integrated graphics, but no, the GPU was being utilized and looks like everything is standard. The resolution is 1872 by 1248 and ray tracing was actually enabled, which is kind of crazy. Let's turn off ray tracing, put the settings a bit down around like medium/high and see how well it does. Seems like lowering the settings made the performance a lot worse. I mean, look at that, 3 FPS. What is going on? This makes no sense. I literally turned off ray tracing and I put everything on medium, yet we're only getting 3 FPS. Now that's more like it. On the medium preset, we got an average FPS of 56.55 with a minimum FPS of 46.57 and a maximum FPS of 67.9. So basically putting down the settings to medium essentially gave us double the FPS that we got with ray tracing low and the settings on high/ultra, which is actually quite a huge improvement. And finally, here we have The Last of Us. I've got everything on medium/low, and as for the resolution, I've tried every single resolution, and for some reason it doesn't fit. They don't have 3:2 on the aspect ratio settings, which is kind of annoying, so I guess we have to deal with black bars, but we do have it on 30-40 by 2025. And at the minute, we're currently getting around 30 FPS, which is actually quite impressive considering we're basically on 4K. The GPU is on 66 degrees, the CPU is 83, which is a bit toasty, but not too bad. The RAM, we're using around 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is nice. And yeah, you can just play The Last of Us as normal. Let's just lower the resolution and see if that increases any performance. Let's just put it on something closer to 1080p, just like that. And let's see how it runs on 1200p. And look at that, we're getting around 45 FPS, 42, 41. All in all, The Last of Us is at a playable standard in my opinion, especially for the settings that we're working with and the hardware. I mean, this only has a 1660 Ti and we're getting pretty decent performance. I mean, it doesn't feel unplayable in my opinion, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Since the target audience for the Surface Book is productivity users, here we have Photoshop. As expected, everything worked pretty seamlessly with no slowdowns once adding multiple layers and effects. Given the display is high grade, doing color correction work will be no trouble whatsoever. This really is the Photoshop laptop and would work well as a drawing tablet. In Premiere Pro, it was a similar experience. Well, Premiere's random crashes does happen, but that's just Premiere. Importing a clip, adding layers and effects, scrubbing through a timeline, and color grading worked well. Genuinely, this is great for editing. Don't underestimate the 1660 Ti. This was a 5-minute 4K clip and it rendered in about 4 to 5 minutes, which wasn't terrible. Quite impressed to be honest. Of course, we can't make a video about a Surface Book without talking about its 2-in-1 functionality, so this is what it's like. And all you have to do to detach the tablet from the main keyboard is just press this button and it should detach. Okay, it gives us a little warning to close all of the apps, so we'll just detach anyway. And it should just make a little click, and there you are. So all you have to do now is just lift it up. And there we have the tablet. Isn't that pretty cool? So of course this is touchscreen, so you can do whatever drawings you want to do. You can do some photo editing, some video work, some animation. This is essentially the perfect laptop for those kind of tasks. We don't have a Surface Pen at the minute, so we can't really test out that. But yeah, you can test out the touch functionality. Everything works as intended. Let me just go into Paint and see how responsive it really is. Okay, Paint, there you are. Okay, RIP Paint 3D. So here we have the tablet. Let's see how responsive the touchscreen really is. Come on, you know you want to. But yeah, pretty good, pretty responsive, not much latency in that. And of course you have the keyboard/palm rest, which has a battery in it, and this is where the GPU lives. So if we take this apart, you can actually find the GPU and you can find the battery. And yeah, this is actually a pretty cool solution. The fact that they put the GPU within the keyboard chassis means that the tablet won't get as warm. The CPU is in this, which is kind of annoying because you actually have to lift up the screen to actually change the thermal paste or change the SSD. But other than that, it's a pretty good solution to a 2-in-1. And for the price we paid, I honestly can't complain for the specs that we have. And this by itself costs like £250 the last time I checked on eBay. So that's kind of impressive. The fact that we got this and also the tablet is a pretty sick deal in my opinion. If you really want to, you can turn this thing around. Let's just turn the keyboard around and place it the other way so we can put it in tent mode. So just slot it just like that. And there you have it. Look at that. That's quite sick, isn't it? So if you want to put it into tent mode, you can do just that. Of course, we got to talk about the display, and honestly, this might be one of the best displays I've ever covered on this channel. I mean, look at those colors. They look pretty good. It almost looks OLED, but I won't give it that. This is a 15-inch Pixel Sense display, which is, I think, Microsoft's proprietary version of a touchscreen display. It is pretty cool. It has a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is pretty good if you want a bigger screen vertically. It's 60 Hz and it's 261 ppi, which is pretty good for a laptop display. Aside from the specs, the colors look really nice, really crisp, really vivid and vibrant. I honestly don't have much more to say except that these screens are stellar and you won't have any faults with it in my opinion. It would have been nice if it was 120 Hz considering this was nearly £3,000 brand new. But yeah, do let me know down in the comments what you think about this display. In my opinion, I think it's excellent, especially for the price I paid. One thing I was skeptical about were the speakers, because the speakers are actually located on the actual tablet. So let's take a listen and see how well they do. I think if you're paying nearly £3 for this brand new, then you would expect some really good speakers, and as expected, these speakers are pretty good, not too bass heavy, enough clarity, and all around pretty good speakers. One good way to gauge at how long this Surface Book has been used for is taking a look at crystal disk info. So currently the health status is 92%, which is pretty good. The power on count is 665. I guess if we turn it on again, it'll be 666. The power on hours is 9,875, and converted to years and days, that is 1 year and 46 days, which isn't too bad considering that this laptop is 5 years old. So all in all, I'd say that the drive is in pretty good condition. Of course, the batteries, which to be honest, don't look too bad. I mean, take a look for yourself. I think it looks pretty good. The first battery, which I presume is in the tablet, and the second battery is underneath the keyboard. In my opinion, doesn't look terrible, especially for the age of this laptop. I think it's not often on this channel where something just works straight out of the box, so I wasn't bothered to actually disassemble this. But if you are curious on what it looks like within, then I'll put a few pictures. That's what it looks like. Of course, the CPU is located underneath the display, so I wasn't bothered actually taking that out and irreparably damaging the display. I am not about that, let's be honest, especially for what I paid for. I'm just going to keep it as is, I'll be honest with you guys. But there you are, there you have the Surface Book 3. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. In my opinion, I think this is an excellent machine for the price, and the fact that this cost so much back in the day. But yeah, do let me know what you think. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, comment, and also hype the video. Keep up the support, and I'll keep on delivering. So thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one.